35% tariffs on Canadian goods are in effect, and some businesses are scrambling to become compliant with CUSMA, trying to avoid paying those fees. And while our steel, aluminum, and auto sectors are facing crushing 50% tariffs, most other exports are protected under the Canadian-United States-Mexico Agreement, known here in Canada as CUSMA. Under that agreement, around 90% of Canadian goods remain tariff-free or with a lower percentage. Canada continues to maintain one of the lowest trade rates with America, even with all these new rules and tariffs in place. And this all comes as Dominic LeBlanc says he is expecting Prime Minister Carney and U.S. President Trump to speak over the next couple of days. So for more on CUSMA, we're joined this morning by Steve Boshevich. He is the CEO of A&A Customs Brokers. Steve, great to have you back with us. We had a great conversation last week when we were all trying to figure out what this all meant. And we learned from you and other businesses last week that the CUSMA exemption is almost like a discount code that you plug in when you buy something online. But that companies now are going to have to be very specific about what makes them exempt. So I guess we'll start there. What makes an export CUSMA compliant?
Sure. Hey, thanks for having me back. It's great to be here. So primarily it's goods that are made of products or finished products that are sourced from North America. So if your goods are produced, grown, manufactured in North America, it's generally a pretty easy yes, or substantially transformed. So things that even foreign goods, if you're bringing them into the country and you're adding substantial value with Canadian labor, you can claim your CUSMA status. The things that are not covered would be goods primarily consisting of foreign materials, repackaged goods. So if you're buying something from another country, repackaging and then shipping it out, not adding enough value. So as you said, you know, the carve-outs would be some of the heavier industries, but generally speaking, if you're adding the value is a key word here. Marketing, shipping, margin, these are not considered parts of the value of a product. So it's really important when you're determining and self-determining your value that you're only considering the inputs into the creation process, not the retail price or the resale price.
This may seem like a basic question, but could that even include opening the boxes, taking them out of the packages, and then sorting them? Could that be considered the labor of putting it together?
It's, I mean, that's something for an expert to kind of look at your supply chain and determine. That's more of a logistical activity, so part of a shipping type of activity. But at the end of the day, they're going to calculate how much labor in Canada goes into the finished product, and you'll do some calculations on that. So that's a really case by case, but it can be.
Steve, can you share with everybody the example you gave to me about how a product is actually considered CUSMA compliant? You used this great example last week of a safety harness.
Right. I've got a few great ones we dug up for you, too. So this one in particular is really interesting because it came very, very early in this process back in February, March. So this company, Canadian company, they source nylon rope from China. They bring it into Canada. They were sourcing hooks, stainless steel hooks from Turkey, and they were putting them together in Canada. They were braiding the rope, they were cutting it, they were sealing it, they were putting the hooks on, and then they were selling them to the United States as security harnesses for construction workers. After all the tariffs came in, Turkey and China was pretty much 80% of the value. They were creating the process. They started sourcing their hooks from an American company, bringing them into Canada, adding them to the nylon rope, refactored a little bit of their process, and now they're fully CUSMA compliant. So duty-free coming into the U.S. saved the business. I have another great one, which is we have a Quebec company that we actually met last week following our show. We met this company last week and they sent us a letter saying that they manufacture throw pillows, blankets, and they ship them to the United States. Back before all this happened, they were sourcing their cotton, their wool, their hemp entirely from outside of North America. Since this transformation happened, an entirely North American supply chain. So 100% of their goods are now sourced from North America, and then they sell back to North America. So that was a great win for them as well.
These carve-outs, or Chapter 98, as they're more formally known in the industry, is a section of CUSMA that actually gives tariff exemptions to certain goods. How do Chapter 98s work?
Okay, so Chapter 98s are generally a special sector of the U.S. tariff code, which allows goods to temporarily enter the United States or re-enter the United States. So if a product is already in the U.S. and then let's just say it's shipped to Canada, and it undergoes minor modifications, maybe repair, processing, some minor alterations, and then it's returned to the United States. The value breakdown sort of works like this. If the machine costs $20,000, it comes to Canada for a $3,000 repair. The repair is a $2,500 labor cost, and then maybe a $500 part from China. When that when that finished machinery, the repaired piece of machinery, goes back to the United States, you're not paying duty on the $20,000. That's already been deducted. The Canadian value of the labor, that $2,500, is generally CUSMA compliant, and again, that's not being tariffed. The $500 part from China would be. So on a $23,000 conceptual job, you may be only paying the $500 or tariff on the $500, which is a pretty big advantage for a lot of Canadian companies. The other one would be temporary imports. If you're running a trade show, for instance, so we have a company that does a lot of trade show booths, and they supply a lot of different types of businesses with trade shows. They import the goods into the U.S. They know it's coming back, so they do a temporary import. Photographers is another great example. Anyone that's bringing their goods into the U.S. and then bringing them back, that's a temporary import. So you don't have to worry about tariffs and reclaiming duty and all those other things.
Last question for you, Steve. What is the possible impact of the carve-outs on Canada's bottom line?
Yeah, I think consumer-wise, there isn't a direct hit immediately. I think these are goods entering the United States. They're primarily being paid by the U.S. population. In Canada, however, industry-wise, I think there's companies who can benefit, and then there's vulnerable companies. And companies who benefit are those with fully North American supply chains. And it's not just about their continuity of their business. They're able to gain market share against competitors from other countries who are subject to tariffs. We have a great example of a company who makes Adirondack and Muskoka chairs out in Ontario. They're under CUSMA, they're not paying the tariffs where maybe some of their Asian counterparts or competitors would be. We have another healthcare company, they make protein supplements, these kind of niche protein supplements in BC, again, entirely sourced in North America. Both of these companies have seen pretty good growth throughout all of this, and I think that's the competitive pressure on the other side. There are vulnerable companies, e-commerce shippers, drop shippers, and third-party logistics companies, which rely primarily on Asian-sourced goods, and then you ship them to the U.S. They're in a bit of a difficult position trying to refactor some of their business, especially the ones that were using that $800 de minimis as an advantage, and then the heavy industries as well, automobile, copper, and steel, et cetera.
Steve Wojciechowicz, I promised you we would bring you back because you did such a great job of explaining all the exemptions to us. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me again.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.